Hi, this is John Wren. This is the Startup Show. Well, start number 2. This is the Startup Show. My name is John Wren. We're here each Friday at noon, and you can hear the little computer telling me it's noon right now. So you might think I'm sorry for the inconvenience there. It started, then stopped. Hopefully you're still with us. We do this each Friday at noon. I've been doing it for a long time, and starting next week, we're going to do it this week, but next week at WeWork. We'll be here in Denver, and we hope to be at other WeWork around the country soon, so that you can come to WeWork, be on the show, tell us about your startup idea, your new business, whatever it is you want to share. Our topic is how do things get started? That could be starting a new career, a new project or a campaign, a new business. But how do you go from that first thought to the first sale if it's a business, first thought, first day on the job if it's a new career? And we share experience, not theory. And if you've got a startup story you'd like to tell, we'd love to have you. You can check us out on meetup.com/small biz chamber, hyphenated, small hyphen biz, B-I-Z hyphen chamber. And you can call us if you have any questions, you'd like to be on the show, especially. Give me a call, 303-861-1447. That's 303-861-1447. Leave a complete message, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Now, the Startup Show has grown out of the Small Business Chamber of Commerce, which grew out of the Idea Cafe Startup Workshop. And this week, we're trying something new with the Idea Cafe Startup Workshop. It's going to be the same 90 minutes where we share startup experience face-to-face. We do a fresh thought hunt, a brainstorming type technique, and we share information. And we say, if we're successful, you'll be too busy to come back next week. Now, we're going to try something new with it. We're going to be calling it a startup. We'll still do the same 90 minutes, but we'll have other resources, mentors, people we can refer you to so that you can work on your own business over the weekend. And maybe it takes more than a weekend, but the idea is that you come and you start. And that's why we say, and it's always been the idea, but we think talking in terms of the startup weekend is going to get people more in the mood to actually work over the weekend so that you can hit the ground running Monday morning. If you have any questions about it, if you'd like to be a mentor or a coach so that we can refer people to you, give me a call. John Wren, Small Business Chamber of Commerce, 303-861-1447. Now, I'm going to be at WeWork Denver as our main headquarters location now. And you can meet me there to talk about your business or maybe how you'd like to be an ambassador to take what we're doing here in Denver to the WeWork in your location in cooperation with your local Chamber of Commerce, Service Club, other groups like that. Now, a service club I'm cooperating with here in Denver is the Optimus Club. And we're doing something in June that you might want to pick up on. There's a website for it, and it's a celebration of the Magna Carta. Magna Carta was signed June of 1015. We celebrated the 300th anniversary of it. And now we're going to start doing it every other year because there were a series of documents that followed up the Magna Carta. And the Magna Carta was probably the most important document ever created in the world. It took governing in a radically new direction. We probably wouldn't have a United States of America if we hadn't started thinking about these things with the Magna Carta. So we're going to be celebrating that every other year, and that's this June 15th at Magna Carta Park in Denver. If you Google Magna Carta Park Optimus, it'll come right up, and you'll see 4 very short talks that were given at the big celebration 2 years ago, and it'll give you a flavor of what you might want to be here in Denver for, or you might want to start one of your own. So Magna Carta, June 15th, and the Optimus Club International. That's the kind of thing that you can cooperate with in your own local area that helps leverage what you're doing to advance your, especially if you have a professional practice, if you're a CPA, public accountant, a lawyer in public practice, if you're a consultant or coach, anyone like that, doing what we've been doing here in Denver for over 20 years might help you be even more helpful to your community, and it also might help you find people that you can be of service to in other ways. We also think it's a way for WeWork to find new tenants. You can help us out. What we do is free and open to everyone, but we will earn a small commission at WeWork if you let them know that you came because you heard about it from John Wren. Go on your computer, Google WeWork. It's all one word, WeWork, all one word. And go to your nearest WeWork and do yourself a favor. Think about officing there if you're in your home right now. And this is also a test. We're going to be asking people that do this because they've heard about it on the Startup Show or any of the other activities of the Small Business Chamber to let us know what you think. When you move from your home to the WeWork office, do you get more productive, less productive, about the same? And we'll be giving feedback on that each week as we start broadcasting this show, not exactly broadcasting, but originating this show from WeWork Denver's WeWork Union Station. Very easy to get to on the light rail. You go to Union Station, you can get there from all over town quickly on the light rail, no matter how heavy the traffic is. The light rail moves fast. So light rail to Union Station, and we're just 2 blocks away on Wewata, 1550 Wewata. And come down and look around. It's a fun thing to visit, even if you never move there. It's a very different kind of place. They're having a contest nationally, going to award grant money to people that want to take what they're already doing and grow their business more quickly. And I'm hoping that we're able to do that. And I'd like to hire someone in every WeWork location that would be working full-time to try to help the local community, offer an alternative to some of the things that are out there about startup that really are killing startup in America. You know, startups don't start the way that we are taught that they're supposed to. I say I'm a recovering MBA because a lot of what I learned in graduate business school, I've had to overcome to be actually helpful to people who are going from first thought to first sale in a business or starting a new career. I've had all kinds of jobs in all kinds of industries, so generally I can kind of understand where someone's coming from, no matter what it is they want to start. But the thing that they nearly all have in common these days is they think they have to have a really solid, award-winning business plan to get started, and that's just not true. Dr. Amar Bahidi, B-H-I-D-E, if you just Google Amar Bahidi, you'll see his books. He's written several. The one that has helped me the most is it grew out of the Harvard Business Review articles that he wrote a series of that I discovered that confirmed I was on the right path as I started doing this over 20 years ago, talking about startup. Dr. Bahidi has sent his students to talk to the founders of successful businesses and find out how they actually got from that first thought to the first sale. And now, when he invites them into the classroom, he has the same problem that I think everybody does, especially today with a million cups of coffee and so forth. People come and tell their story. And he would invite them to Harvard to speak at his class on entrepreneurship. They would almost uniformly say, he tells me, well, Harvard students, here's what you need to do. You need to do a lot of market research. Make sure you're going into the right business, because you can waste a lot of time and money going down the wrong path. So do the market research and then write a very thorough strategic plan. You've got to get it down on paper. And what's cash flow for the next 5 years, and on, the standard sort of thing that you used to hear all the time. Now that's just changing a bit because people know that that approach just doesn't work. But Dr. Baheti would invite them in. That's what they'd say. He was getting these results back from students, so he would always follow up with the question, well, is that how you actually started? And the speakers would say, well, no, but it would have been a lot better if I would have. You know, and that's a successful business speaking. And how does he or she know that that would have been more successful? You know, what's become clear is that this small business administration approach, they were founded in 1953 for the purpose of trying to stimulate the economy with a veterans home loan program. And once they concluded their planning, their thinking, it was where Eisenhower spent his summers. I have had the great privilege of speaking to an observer at that meeting. And what happened is they said, well, okay, this home mortgage program is one thing, but how about something for small businesses too? And they took the thinking of home mortgages into business. And it made sense to Eisenhower, since that is the way the military works, is you do all kinds of planning and preparation. And when you're not at war, you're preparing to go to war. And business in this country has been different than that for 230 years. It's what's made us such a strong economy, is that we have not done that. You know, what has happened is that somebody gets an idea and they try it. There's a freedom here to take action and risk your own money that other countries didn't have hardly at all before they took a look at what was happening over here, and then it spread somewhat. But what's happened is now the MBAs, you know, the MBA was first granted in something like 1912 by Harvard. They needed to develop a middle management level, and they had MBA classes that were helpful for that purpose. And what's happened I went to the University of Denver. I earned an MBA from them. I've had to overcome a lot of that, as I said earlier, to try to be helpful to somebody starting something new. And in a way, maybe that's not quite true, because back then there really was almost nothing about entrepreneurship in an MBA program anywhere in the country. There were a few exceptions to that, but for the most part, that was just not something that was taught in business school. Entrepreneurship was sort of outside the scope. You know, I talk like this and people come to me and tell me their story. One that I remember right now as an electrician, a very successful electrical company. He came over to me after I spoke like this at some service club, and he said, you know, you're really right on with that. This market research, the planning, I couldn't have done any of that for my business. He said, but I had a good CPA, had done my taxes for me. I was working for someone else, and I decided to start my own electrical contracting company. So I made an appointment with him. I went in, and all he could do is tell me why I shouldn't do it. Most businesses fail, and on and on and on. And so he said, I said, okay, well, thank you for your time. And I started to walk out, and he says, you're going to do it anyway, aren't you? And the electrical contractor to be said, yeah, I'm going to give it a try. And he said, well, come back here. Let me help you, because you will need some help. And the guy, you know, hit a home run. He did very well. That is not an exception. That's the rule. Now, the exception is occasionally there are businesses started with market research, careful planning, using other people's money. And sometimes there are these unicorns that really take off. So I'm not saying that that's impossible. In our country, there's all kinds of things. So one option is what the SBA has been talking about since 1953. Kauffman came along, and you know, Marion Kauffman had a very successful business, died, left his wife a lot of money, and some people got their hooks into him and started putting the SBA message on steroids, talking about this strategic planning market research model, venture capital model, you might call it. And universities, colleges across the country bought into it because there was money flowing to them to put out this message that you need to do planning. Now, I hate to think there's some conspiracy. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but you would almost think maybe large Fortune 500 companies got together and put together that message to screen out people because it would keep the competition down. Surely they wouldn't be that cruel, but for whatever reason, this poor widow was talked into using her money in what I see as a very destructive way. She's passed on. Now they've got full control of it. And now they also are noticing the fact that the more we're talking about entrepreneurship, the fewer startups there are. This has become a real problem in our country. Entrepreneurship class is kind of it's a little bit like poetry. I mean, you might take a class in poetry to learn to appreciate poetry, but it's not going to make you a poet. And poets know that. And as a matter of fact, academic poetry is killing poetry in this country. That's a column in the Wall Street Journal on Poetry Day, which I think is April 1st, coming up again. It was, how academic poetry is killing. It used to be this country, there'd be poetry in nearly every issue of the newspaper. You never see poetry in the newspaper anymore. People like to read poetry. They'd listen to it being recited. They'd share. But that doesn't happen anymore. And part of it is because it's being jammed down our throat. Now, the same thing's happening now with entrepreneurship. Poetry, entrepreneurship, it's taught about what you should do, and it kills the muse, the creative urge, and the person that might have been a startup decides, that's overwhelming. I think I'm just going to get a job and keep it and be one of the cogs in the machine. Now, there's nothing wrong with the cogs in the machine. I don't really say this because there are people that work to live. They don't live to work. Entrepreneurs can fall into living to work, and that's something that usually needs to be bounce back from. It can lead to some real problems, workaholism, burnout, that type of thing. So there is a downside to entrepreneurship that business people have to be aware of. But to take somebody with a bright idea and force that on them at the beginning, I'm just so thankful that the SBA was not around when my father decided to go into business, because I just have no doubt in my mind that they would have been able to talk him out of doing it. He had no business going into business for himself. He almost bought a franchise of Snap-on Tools and instead came to Colorado, started his own business, and I was right there at his side as he started. So I got to see it from start to finish. We sold it 20 years later for cash, got a good price, and then my dad just couldn't figure out what to do next, got cancer and died at way too young of an age. And it was a tragic thing, the way that he wasn't able to enjoy the fruits of his labor. But part of the reason for that is he had fallen into this trap of instead of working to live, living to work. And it was so preoccupied with his business that once it was gone, he didn't know what to do. Now, that's why I think today, people like that should be getting together. And I think that's one reason they're able to find a lot of recruits for SCORE, Service Corps of Retired Executives. SCORE is one of the SBA offshoots. The problem is that it's Service Corps of Retired Executives. If it was retired entrepreneurs, I think they'd have much better luck. But they take people that have been the cog in the machine in the big companies and then put them together with these people like the electrical contractor wannabe, and they just scare them to death. Oh man, do you know how dangerous that is? Look, I had a 20-year career. I got good benefits. Why don't you look for a job? So we have a tax-funded enterprise in this country to snuff out the entrepreneurial spirit in America. Now, SCORE does help some people. Some people have gotten together with a good counselor, gotten good results. And so if you're working with a SCORE counselor and you find it helpful, that's great. It is an alternative, but I know for sure in their metrics, in their annual report a couple of years ago, they actually put out the metric that if somebody came in and saw them and did not start their business, they felt like they were doing them a favor. So they counted that as a success. They figured if they were able to talk them out of it, it wouldn't have been a successful business. Well, I think that's crazy. I think it's pretty easy to talk someone out of going forward. Now, by the same token, we don't want people to be foolish and foolhardy. And that's why we're doing these new startup weekends. We did it as a startup workshop. Now it's a startup weekend. And it's really still the same 90-minute workshop. We're going to have our first one this afternoon at WeWork here in Denver. It'll be from 2 to 3:30. Then there's another meeting at 4 or 4:30, another meeting at 6 that are optional. If you want to make it into a startup weekend, I would encourage you to plan on staying for those. Or you might come for the 90 minutes at 2, then come back the next week for the later meetings. There's also meetings over the weekend that you can take advantage of or not. And what we'll be doing from 2 to 3:30 today is sharing startup experience, direct experience. We ask people not to say what they wish they'd done instead, but we like them to talk about it, warts and all, how they got an idea. And it's not necessarily just starting a business. How did they start a school? How did they pick a school out? A career, their spouse, whatever it is. Some startup story, just the nutshell version, first thought to first day on the job. And then we have a fresh thought process that's brainstorming on steroids. It's a powerful technique. And wherever you're at in the startup process, you can use it to get some incredible feedback from a couple other people. And we structure that so that it accommodates whether there's just a few people or a lot of people. We can break into small groups, and we've been doing this for a long time. You'll find it very helpful. Now, this is free and open to everybody. The reason we do it is because I think it has a powerful effect. 5280 Magazine says we've infused Denver with an entrepreneurial spirit, and I like to think that we've had something to do with it. Now, there's a lot of other stuff going now. Some of it I'm a little leery of the message, as I told you before, but maybe I'm being overcritical. Maybe I'm just going to try to offer what we have been doing for 20 years. We know it helps people, but if you'll come today at 2 o'clock, you can experience it. And almost everybody's starting something new. If you've got a business, you're not starting a new business, but you may have a project you want to look at, or a campaign of some sort, a political campaign, anything where you want to go from whatever has happened in the past and now something's happened and you're going to make it different in the future. I think you'll find the meeting helpful. And we do it because my personal motivation is I want to try to do what I can to preserve the opportunity my father had in 1949 to start his business for my grandkids and my kids. I've got very entrepreneurial kids, but the grandkids need to be helped too. I'm also a real advocate of people, the grassroots, getting more involved in the political process in a constructive way, not necessarily marching and rallies and things like that, but in ways that actually get representatives elected that are accountable to their constituents. That doesn't always happen today. Sometimes it's the big money that wins. And so we talk about that, but we don't advocate for any particular issue or candidate. We leave that up to the people. So what we say is our mission is to strengthen the grassroots in business and politics. I've been doing it here in Denver for over 20 years. And now, perhaps with the help of WeWork, we're going to try to take it across the country, who knows, maybe around the world, and try to help other places become a little bit more like Denver is one way of looking at it. And now that's Denver as a result of these Idea Cafe startup workshops and what we've been doing. Some of the stuff going on with startup here, I have my doubts about. We had a campaign to eliminate the homeless, and they applied some of these techniques, and we have more homeless people than ever. Now, maybe that's not their fault. Maybe, I don't know, but I think it is their fault. They've spent a lot of money on it. So they've taken that government type big business thinking of a geologist and tried to apply it to business startup. And that's just not the way most businesses start. Some do. Some do market research, write a plan, and raise other people's money and get started. Our mayor and now governor, John Hickenlooper, did that. And the problem is he was successful. And some people call him, I don't think he was quite this successful, but some people call these businesses that just take off unicorns. And the University of Denver has said they want to have an entrepreneurship program that specializes in unicorns. Well, that's good work if you can find it, but it's a little bit unrealistic. If that planning and research worked as well as the SBA and apparently the University of Denver thinks that it works, we wouldn't have a market economy, we'd have a planned economy. And that may be behind the thinking of some of the people that advocate for this. But for over 230 years, this country has done it a different way. And that's what we talk about at the Idea Cafe Startup Workshop. We have Small Business Chamber of Commerce method. Starts with usually bounce, recovery. It's, starting a business is a little bit like being a boxer. Good boxers come out of the gutter. It's usually not the guy that's been successful as an athlete. Now he's going to become a boxer. Entrepreneurship is a little bit like that. It's hard, dirty work, but the payoff is enormous for the bootstrapper, the person that gets it started from next to nothing and gets it going, and eventually exits the business and does very well. But he doesn't start the business just to dump it. These serial entrepreneurs, for the most part, use the market research method. And if you look at the rate of startup across the country, people buying into that is what's killing our rate of startup. The rate of startup was way down. Now, the statistics can be deceiving because sometimes they are counting as a business. Guys like me that are sitting at their kitchen table with a bathrobe on as a business. Well, that's not a business. Where you can really see it most clearly are the businesses from 10 to 100 employees. It's just like dropping like a rock. And that's because there aren't as many real businesses getting started. And we're trying for this. My iPhone here is answering the question for us. So thank you. But I'll check that later. Somehow it got turned on. We're almost out of time today. This is, again, John Wren, Small Business Chamber of Commerce. We do this each Friday at noon. I was planning on being a WeWork in Denver today, but I had a transportation problem, a technical problem. I'm just going to do it here from my kitchen table one more time. But I'll be at WeWork next Friday at noon if you'd like to be part of this. And it may change as we have more people. This has been sort of a head and shoulders John Wren talking thing here recently. I've interviewed some incredible people, and those tapes are on YouTube. An outstanding interview with two of them, as a matter of fact. Edmund Phelps, who's a Nobel Prize winning economist. His book, Mass Flourishing, I believe should be read by everybody in the country that is involved in all businesses, especially lawyers, CPAs. If you're hiring a lawyer or CPA, I'd ask him if he's familiar with Edmund Phelps, Mass Flourishing. Go to your bookstore and buy one. Go to Amazon. It's all over the place. You'll be glad you bought it, and then give one to your elected representative, because if they don't understand this in Washington, we're not going to have the kind of country that we've had for the last over 230 years. They understood entrepreneurship. Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations after meeting with Benjamin Franklin, one of the key founders of this country. That conversation had to be pretty interesting. But, the market isn't everything. Some people get scared and think, well, how are you going to make money with these people with profound problems? There's always a need for charity. But the government may not be the best mechanism for that charity. And in some ways, starting a nonprofit and getting donations is not any different than starting a business. It's just who's providing the money. You still have to go out and raise the money, except when they lock it in with taxes. That's why I was so against this cultural arts tax we have here in Colorado. If you look at the cultural arts in Denver today and the cultural arts in Denver before we had the cultural arts tax, I think you'd see some very surprising things. Now, there'll be 10 more years before it's voted on again. I tried to stop 107 and 108. Just to be completely honest, registered a political committee, but it was really just me and my money. And, most of the money, it was almost no money was into the computer. I thought with social media that we could beat 107 and 108. They're such bad ideas, but they passed. And now the poor legislature is having to figure out how to implement them. Hopefully they're going to put it on hold. But here on this show and with the Small Business Chamber, we're not going to advocate for any issue or against any issue. We're just going to talk about how can you be effective as the grassroots business person. How do you have your own business that enables you to have the time away to actually be involved in politics without being beholden to a large corporation and their political positions. And so for that reason, not all large corporations support us, but some do. Some enlightened large businesses understand that if we dry up this fountain of jobs that we've had in the past from small businesses, that we're going to be in deep trouble, especially as technology comes on board. Everybody's going to have to be making several adjustments throughout their life and the kind of work that we're doing. And that's what we're trying to do, is develop a way to help. We keep to 30 minutes. Our time's up for today, but if you'd like to know more, take a look on the web, smallbizchamber.org. Got a Facebook site, Small Business Chamber, on Twitter, Idea Cafe, and now the Idea Cafe chat every morning, Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Join us for that. You can ask questions, make comments. So it's a 15-minute break for entrepreneurs, 10 o'clock Mountain Daylight Time. That's noon Eastern Time on Twitter at Idea Chat. Well, this is John Wren, Small Business Chamber of Commerce, reminding you and me, this life is very short. Let's go get started. Thanks for watching.